Hey guys, I'm coming at you from my hotel lobby in the United States. Um, because I'm coming at you from my hotel lobby, I don't have any way to write notes. I'm really sorry. I'm stuck here. I was not planning to be here, of course. I'm supposed to be in the classroom with you. I don't have my Wacom tablet. I don't have any way to write notes for you. So I'm only going to be able to lecture you. Sorry about that. So today's lecture is on the Atlantic revolutions. First, I want to show you a map so you understand why they're called the Atlantic revolutions. Let's open up a map here. All right, here we are. Here's the Atlantic Ocean. We're going to talk about the French Revolution in this section. We're going to talk about the American Revolution. Those are the two I'm going to talk about today. And then later in this chapter, we'll talk about Latin American revolutions. They're down here. So you see, you've got the Atlantic Ocean, and so that's why we call them the Atlantic revolutions. They're all along the Atlantic coast. All right, stop share. Let's go back to me. Okay, all right. So first, before the revolutions began, lead up to the revolutions, there was the 7 Years' War. That is years with an apostrophe after the S, as in the war belongs to the years. 7 years, Y-E-A-R-S apostrophe war, from 1754 to 1763. And historians consider this war to be the first global war. It was like a world war, but we don't call it the World War. That's not the name of it, but it was a world war. We call it a global war. The 7 Years' War. There were battles all over the place. In North America, we had Great Britain battling France. Now, you know that Great Britain had colonies in North America, and France had colonies in North America. Well, the two of them were fighting over territory in North America. In Europe, Prussia was fighting Austria. Then we also had those major nations, or those major nations were also having battles in other places. They had battles in the Caribbean. Because they had military, they had armies there. So their militaries were fighting each other in the Caribbean. Their militaries were fighting each other in West Africa. So we had battles in West Africa, we had battles in the Caribbean, we had battles in North America, we had battles all over Europe. We also had battles on the sea, like seafaring warships were having battles. So this was a global war. Well, war is crazy expensive. War is really, really expensive. And Great Britain didn't know what they were gonna do to make their money back. And somebody had this idea, hey, let's tax our colonies. And then the government of Great Britain was like, that's a brilliant idea. Let's tax the colonies. Well, the colonies, they weren't so happy about that. And especially because the North American colonies had been pretty much just ignored and left alone and living this completely autonomous life. Autonomous means self-rule, living a completely autonomous life for pretty much 100 years. Great Britain had ignored them. They had seen no value in their North American colonies, and they had been ignored. So the North American colonies had kind of made their own government. They had elected their own little local rulers, and nobody ever really bothered them from Great Britain, but they truly thought of themselves as British. You know, when colonizers, when a nation, when a people colonize somewhere else, you've got the big bad guy that goes and takes over the native land. Well, the white people, the people that look like me, that were living in North America, they thought of themselves, they were the colonizers. They were the oppressors. Well, suddenly Great Britain was treating them as if they were the natives and treating them like they were the people that had been colonized, and they were not having it. They were like, and they were really angry about that. And suddenly they realized, like, wait a minute, we're British. We are British people, and we don't even have representatives in Parliament. Why is that? How dare they try and tell us what to do? They can't rule us. They can't raise our taxes if we don't even have representatives. We don't even have representation in Parliament. They can't do that to us. And so they rebelled against their oppressive imperialistic regime, trying to raise their taxes and suddenly come in and tell them what to do. It would be like if your parents had never been strict with you ever, had never given you a curfew, had never like looked at your phone, had never really cared what you did on the internet, never anything, and you had always been free to do whatever you wanted. And suddenly, like tonight, your parents just swooped into your bedroom and made all these rules. And we're like, you have to go to bed at 9 o'clock, and they put parental controls on your computer, and I'm gonna start taking your phone away from you and reading all your text messages. Like, what? I'm not having this. And so they had a rebellion, and it worked. They were the underdogs. Nobody thought they were going to succeed, but they got help from the French, because the French and Great Britain are enemies. They hated each other. And so France was like, what? The colonists are fighting against Great Britain? Yeah, we'll go help you. So France sent a whole bunch of soldiers over to North America to help the colonists fight their enemy, Great Britain. So the colonists won their revolution and became the United States of America. In that mix, while that was happening, this guy Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence. It was a letter that he wrote to the government of Great Britain saying, we are no longer a colony, we are no longer colonies of Great Britain, we are an independent nation. And in this letter, there were lots and lots of references to Enlightenment thinking. One particular Enlightenment philosopher that's referenced a lot in there, not by name, but by thought, is John Locke. Know this name, Locke. It's L-O-C-K-E, John Locke. John Locke is famous for saying that men have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of property. Well, Thomas Jefferson wrote in the Declaration of Independence that men have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I mean, that's a direct reference. Anyone should be able to read that and go, oh, he's referencing John Locke. So, I mean, you know, if you're asked to write an essay about the Declaration of Independence, I would definitely throw in there that something about Enlightenment thinking, Enlightenment philosophy, John Locke. Make sure and put that in there. Okay, so Americans win their revolution and lots of Enlightenment thinking. They were inspired by the Enlightenment. So now in US history, the American Revolution is going to be an entire unit. I don't know, maybe 2 units, but in world history, that's it. You got the American Revolution. Now we're moving on to the French Revolution. Oh my goodness, the French Revolution is my favorite time period in world history. I wish I could talk to you about the French Revolution for 6 weeks because I could. I could talk to you for an hour and a half a day, every day for 6 weeks about the French Revolution, but I can't. I'm going to try to do it in about, I don't know, 20 minutes. I'm going to try. Okay, so it's 1789, and now France is broke. We had the 7 Years' War, and then not only that, France sent soldiers to help America with their revolution. So France is really broke. King Louis the 16th, we're talking Roman numerals XVI, the 16th. King Louis the 16th has no idea what he's going to do to save his country. So he calls together this meeting called the Estates General. The Estates General is an old-fashioned meeting that hasn't been used in a really long time in France, but it's an ancient, old meeting that French people use to help at a time of crisis. And it's this thing where the estates come together to help the nation out of a time of crisis. What are the estates, Mrs. Gibbons? Okay, the estates. In France at the time, the classes were legally divided into their class, but they didn't call them classes, they called them estates. So there was the first estate, the second estate, and the third estate. The first estate was the clergy. The clergy were people that worked for the church, you know, your priests, your monks, your nuns, those kinds of people. Those are your clergy, and they were crazy rich, really, really, really rich. Second estate was the nobles. Hopefully you know enough about history that if I just say the word noble, you already know that they were crazy rich also. The third estate is everyone else, doctors, lawyers, merchants, farmers, peasants, poor homeless people, everyone, absolutely everyone else was in the third estate. So the king, Louis the 16th, you have to know Louis the 16th. King Louis the 16th gets together the Estates General, ESTATES, General, GENERAL, the Estates General. Now, I'm going to make up these numbers. Please know I've made up these numbers. I'm just doing it so you understand. The numbers are even. So he gets like 10 people from the first estate, 10 people from the second estate, and 10 people from the third estate, all together in one room. But that's totally unfair because in reality, the first state and the second state combined only make up 2% of French society. The third estate is 98% of French society. Almost everyone is in the third estate. So it's not fair that the first estate and second estate make up almost the entire Estates General. Like 20, we are talking 30 people are in the Estates General, and 20 of them come from the top 2% of society. And they're supposed to decide how we're going to fix France. This is unfair. Okay, and the third estate knows this. Okay, so the Estates General has begun. They walk into the meeting room, and I know that you guys think, because believe it or not, I also was a high school student once. I know that you guys think that adults have it all together, but we really don't. And when you get a whole bunch of adults together in a room, it's really hard for us to take decisions. So the Estates General began, everybody's in the room, and nobody's able to make any decisions. And the third estate is really frustrated with everything that the first and second estates want anyway, because the first and second estates are trying to put all the blame on the third estate. And they're saying, oh, well, we just don't think that we should have to do anything. And the taxes should be raised on the third estate, and the third estate should have to pay higher taxes to fix everything. So the wealthy people, the elites of society, the rich people are suggesting that the poor people should have to pay higher taxes. And so everybody's upset, and the third estate walks out. They just walk out. They walk out. and they walk out. So they walk out and they start their own meeting. They start their own meeting. They call themselves the National Assembly. And I'm sorry, I've lost my train of thought. Give me just a second. Okay. The Third Estate walks out, starts their own meeting, calls themselves the National Assembly, calls themselves the new government of France. They say that they are the new proper official government of France, and they are the ones that have the right to make the rules of France, the new laws for France. They write this thing called the Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen. The Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen. And in this declaration, it says that men are born and remain free and equal in rights. Men are born and remain free and equal in rights. This becomes the preamble, that means beginning section, of the Constitution of the new France. When there's a revolution begins in 1791. So there's this massive revolution because the Third Estate has walked out, so they claim that they are the new government of France. And some people are all, yeah, yay, Third Estate, we're going to be led by the masses, led by the people. And other people are all, no, we want everything to stay the same. And so there's a revolution. There are vast differences between the American Revolution and the French Revolution. It's the American Revolution. Those people considered themselves British, and they didn't really want to not be British. They didn't really want that. The British suddenly started treating them like crap, and they were like, we're not having this. And so they revolted. In France, this is class war. This is straight up class warfare. This is the poor fighting against the rich. That's what was going on in France. This was the rich, elite class saying, we are not going to change anything. We are happy with our lives, and we deserve to be happy, and we deserve this good life, and we should be able to live in our mansions and have our nice cakes and our fancy dresses. And if France is in trouble, then make the poor people take care of it. And the poor people saying, I can't even afford to buy food for my children, and you're having lavish parties every night. You're the one that should be fixing the nation. That's what should be happening. And that's what this war was about. That's what this revolution was about. So there was also the middle classes now. There was this burgeoning middle class in France, the merchants, the lawyers, the teachers, I'm forgetting somebody, but doctors, They were not quite as poor as the peasants, but nowhere near as wealthy as the elite. And they felt that they were better than the peasants, but they were really, really jealous of the elites. And they were somewhere struggling in the middle, not knowing exactly what they wanted out of society. All of this was happening right after this philosopher, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, had become really extremely famous. He was an Enlightenment philosopher. Rousseau, R-O-U-S-S-E-A-U. I'm going to repeat that. R-O-U-S-S-E-A-U. Jean-Jacques Rousseau is a French, probably the most famous French Enlightenment philosopher. He had become really famous for saying, philosophizing that the poor should not be oppressed. I'm going to read to you a very famous line of his. He said, manifestly contrary to the law of nature, that a handful of people should gorge themselves with superfluities while the masses go in want of necessities. So let's break that down. Manifestly contrary to the law of nature. That means completely against the laws of nature. That a handful of people, a small amount of people, should gorge themselves with superfluities, should have so many extras in life, fancy, nice things, while the masses go in want of necessities, while the majority of people don't even have the basic necessities of life. So he had become extremely famous. Rousseau still today is one of the world's most famous philosophers. And he's very famous for these words. So he had become really famous for saying that it goes against the laws of nature that the rich should have all these extra fancy things, while the majority of people can't even afford the basic things like food. And here we are, France is broke. And they called together a meeting to be like, what are we going to do about France? And the rich people are having these lavish, extraordinary parties. And they're saying, ugh, we're not going to help. Make the poor people do it. Make them help. Raise their taxes. Make them pay. Ugh. So this revolution in France, this was a radical revolution. This was radical. There were massive groups of peasants that would gather together, and they attacked the homes of their lords. They would burn the homes of their lords down. They would burn down their offices that had the books with what peasant owed how much money, so that all their debts were lost. They would, groups would organize insurrections in the city. They would destroy business offices. In 1793, the people executed the king. King Louis XVI was executed. Then, shortly after, his wife was too. Marie Antoinette was put to death. So then priests were put under the rule of the government. This was a really big thing because remember, priests, the clergy were in the first estate. They were so rich. They were crazy, crazy rich. And now the government is in control of priests. This was a big thing. So now the government took land away from the church and sold that land and took the money to help the people. This was a big thing. They took land from the church, sold the land, used that money to help the people. Legal privileges that were taken away from the first and second estates, legal privileges that made them better than the third estate were taken away to make all people equal. Sadly, though, the revolution did fall into a very dark time called the Reign of Terror. Not reign, R-A-I-N, reign, R-E-I-G-N, R-E-I-G-N, the Reign of Terror. This guy, Robespierre, R-O-B-E-S, P-I-E-R-R-E. That's all one word. That's his last name, Robespierre. You don't have to worry about his first name. Everybody knows him by his last name, Robespierre, R-O-B-E-S-P-I-E-R-R-E, Robespierre. Robespierre took over. He became the ruler of the revolution. And he was a fanatic. And he decided that there were people on the inside of the revolution that were actually counter-revolutionaries. That means against the revolution, counter-revolutionaries. So he decided there were people against the revolution. In 1793, he started executing those people. And all, like, mass executions, all anyone had to do was say, that person is against the revolution. I heard that person say something bad about the revolution. I heard that guy say something bad about the revolution, and they were executed. Between 1793 and 1794, he executed tens of thousands of people. That's 1 year. 1793 and 1794, tens of thousands of people were executed during the French Revolution. This is called the Reign of Terror. Now, eventually, some people were like, whoa, this has gone way too far. And they stopped him and they executed Robespierre. So now he is gone. The Reign of Terror is over. Then, after that, in 1799, a very successful French army general, a military general, rose to power and grabbed power of all of France, took control of France. His name was Napoleon Bonaparte, but everyone just knows him as Napoleon. You've probably heard his name before, Napoleon, N-A-P-O-L-E-O-N, Napoleon. Napoleon takes control of France. Then he goes on this crazy conquering thing and starts conquering other European areas. And he starts conquering areas all around France. And he's going all over Europe, conquering different regions and making a French empire. And now he has, it's not just little bitty France anymore. Now there's this huge French empire, and Napoleon crowns himself Emperor of France, names himself Emperor of France. He did that in 1804. It was 1899 that he took control of France. His army starts conquering other places. And then in 1804, did I say 1899? Hopefully I didn't. I meant 1799. 1799, he takes control of France. 1804, he's emperor of the French Empire. He kept lots of Enlightenment ideas. Like he was tolerant. He was really big on being tolerant of religions. In his entire empire, he expected religious tolerance. He wanted equal rights. Many places that he conquered welcomed him, but also many places didn't welcome him. And Napoleon Bonaparte has gone down in history as being, his name is strongly associated with the rise of nationalism. Remember that, it's really important. Napoleon's name is associated with the rise of nationalism because Napoleon started taking over these countries, and people started having this nationalistic feeling that they had never really had before, and they didn't want to be led by a French empire. They wanted to have their own nation. Like, they didn't want to be part of France. They wanted to have their own nation. And this idea of nationalism, like being a proud Kazakh or being a proud Russian or being a proud American, really just hadn't really existed before the time of Napoleon. And he came along, and his French Empire and his conquering is strongly associated with the birth of nationalism. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this lecture. I will be making more until I can make it back to Almaty. Bye, guys.